Hello and welcome to Talk the Thrones, the Ringers Game of Thrones after show. My name is Chris Ryan. I am joined by Jason Concepcion and Mallory Rubin.
Hello.
We are talking about the second episode of the 8th and final season of Game of Thrones here tonight on Twitter. If you would like to get in touch with us, please use hashtag Talk the Thrones on Twitter. Send us comments, suggestions, and most importantly, questions and theories. We will get to those in a little bit. You guys, every week we start in the same place. And it's wildfire moments. Yeah. It's what everybody else is talking about on Twitter. There were so many moments in this episode, I barely know if we can narrow them down to like even 3, but Jason, what's your big one coming out?
I'm gonna go with Jon telling Dany about who his parents are as 1A and 1B being Arya getting it in after all these years.
Yeah, that was pretty impressive. Like we had to, there's a lot to even break down. Just like, let's start with the first one, okay? The Jon and Dany situation was, Sam was kind of needling him a little bit, like being like, hey, did you tell her yet? Did you tell her yet? But then we finally get that moment. Was that the right time to tell her?
Is there, I mean, they're all gonna die theoretically soon. Night King's coming. There's no better time than right now. It's not like there's gonna be a better time. It's, you know, we don't know who's gonna survive this, so it's, yes, now is the time to do it.
Yeah, I guess that was, that was sort of the like theme of the episode, was getting all your business done before you get put to the zombie sword.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk about Arya's business in a second, but there was a really, really meaningful moment between Jaime and Brienne that was kind of like, let's just make sure this one good thing happens before so many bad things.
Yeah, Jaime knighting Brienne is like potentially a top 10 Game of Thrones moment.
Yeah.
It was absolutely incredible, and it was very much emblematic of what made this such a shockingly emotional and resonant episode.
Yeah.
Really from start to finish, this felt like our farewell to a lot of the characters that we love and care about.
And I can tell by the tenor of your voice.
I'm emotional. I was wrecked the whole time. I mean, it was a beautiful episode, and there was a lot of key information. You know, we could certainly nominate as wildfire moment a scene like Bran saying the Night King is coming for me. That's huge in terms of the mythology of the show and plot and where this is heading. But something like Jaime knighting Brienne is, I think, the heart of why we love these characters and why we love this story. Yeah. And it was just absolutely beautiful.
You know what I loved about that too, was that so many things in the first episode and 3/4 up until that moment were like, you're just getting stuff done. We have so much stuff on our to-do list that we're moving through. That scene had space, man. Yeah. That scene had a little bit of like emotional dynamism, like there was an arc to it. It wasn't just like, we gotta get to the next reunion, we gotta get to the next conversation.
It's a classic kind of good Thrones scene too, because like the show is always good at giving you that calm before the storm moment. There's the one before Battle of the Blackwater where Bronn and the Hound kind of square off.
Yeah. Slightly tenser.
Slightly tenser, but it's just like a level set moment where characters show you who they are in that moment before they're all facing death, and it was just really cool.
Pod singing Jenny's song, which book readers will know. It reminded me a little bit of Pippin singing in Lord of the Rings as battle is raging around them
before the show started?
Prescient, I think. But this mix, you know, we got humor from Tormund, obviously sexual innuendo and some myth making of his own, but that scene, that montage had really every ingredient that makes a Thrones scene in a Thrones episode great.
Yeah, it seems like you guys both felt like this had a lot of classic Thrones moments.
For sure.
Yeah.
Wait, are you saying that you don't think Tormund suckled at the teat of a giant for 3 months?
I do, and not only do I believe it, it explains how he was later able to fornicate with the bear, Sheila. It's also clear.
There's one more wildfire moment that it falls to me to introduce, which Jason alluded to, obviously, was Arya kind of going for it on her last night on Earth.
Kind of.
She definitely did.
I hope it's not her last night on Earth.
She got her spear that she was...
She did.
Everybody is talking about this out on Twitter. We're going to check out some of the tweets with wins of Twitter. It's what people are saying about the Arya moment. T-Pain, a former guest of Talk the Throne, said, Arya, what's happened? Otherwise, you know, Katie Nolan jumped in, said, wonder if the Citadel had any books that could have told Arya that 3 means 1, doubting Gendry's advanced stats. I like it. And Jamel Hill says, Tormund, take notes from Arya, hashtag them thrones. So everybody's talking about this.
I just want to go on record as saying that Gendry agrees with me that Melisandre doesn't count.
Right, because Gendry, like you, has never taken a sex ed class.
It doesn't count. Didn't count. Okay. That's all I'm saying.
We're going to get to all these moments and more.
I can't wait to talk about the Arya Gendry scene at length. I'm ready.
I promise you only have to wait for a few moments. We're going to get into the Raven Scroll. The Raven Scroll is where we just go through the episode scene by scene, and we start where most of the episode was set, but we'll break this down scene by scene. We go to Winterfell, and we got right into Jaime standing before the 3 judges there.
Yes.
And I thought that this episode was going to be much more comprised of him hanging in the balance.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But Brienne comes through and saves the day for him. What did you guys think of this scene?
I thought it was wonderful. Yeah. I thought it was an interesting storytelling choice to separate the conversation with Bran and Jaime about what had happened in the pilot with Jaime pushing Bran out the window and make this exchange in the Great Hall about what is more commonly known, what everybody else has to contribute. Right. Because what that allowed for was shades of gray, which is where the show is at its best. We all root for Jaime. We all love Jaime. Is Jaime a good guy? Well, no. Yeah. He pushed Bran out of a window. He stabbed Jory through the eye when he attacked Ned's men in the street.
Threatened
he
to
killed his own cousin.
Baby. Yeah.
Edmure's baby, catapult fodder.
Maybe he's just good at trash talk. I don't know.
But he's evolved, and his evolution is one of the greatest feats in not only this show, but as Jason and I talk about a lot, like in storytelling, period. Yeah. And so to have a moment that allows someone like Sansa, who has plenty of reason to hate Jaime, in addition to someone like Bran, who obviously has personal history with him, to say, I think that we should let this guy stay, was wonderful.
I think Tyrion's losing streak continues. This time snitched out by his own brother. Terrible look for Tyrion. Just basically have Jaime be like, yeah, Cersei said that she's going to send troops, but she 100% is not.
Right.
And then look at the look on Tyrion's face was absolutely devastating.
Yeah. Dany savaged him after that.
Yeah, I mean, like, the fact that he still has his job is honestly wild.
That was such a great scene because there were so many different little interpersonal relationships to keep track of, especially Dany's basically being like, I still don't feel like I'm getting the dap that I feel like I deserve as the will-be queen of the Seven Kingdoms, right? She's still frustrated by Sansa not giving her enough respect and Jon not taking her side in those situations.
And now she just found out that Jon is the rightful heir to the throne, which is extremely complicated.
And that was the first moment where we saw that Jon literally wasn't willing to meet Dany's eye. And I think even after the exchange at the end of the episode, we have to wonder how much of that was because he was avoiding that moment where he had to reveal that to her, and how much of it is because Sam's words from last episode are still playing in his mind.
He was just trying to perfectly time it for when the horn blew, so he didn't have to finish this.
A lot of interrupted conversations in this episode.
Talk to her in the crypt, just like blow the horn, even if it's just like a couple minutes early.
That's
we know he's coming before sunrise.
Give me a hard 40 count and then blow the horn.
That's definitely the Winterfell Thrones version of call me 5 minutes into this date.
In the forges, Arya asks Gendry if he has finished her weapon, and he says not yet, and they get into a conversation about White Walkers, and Arya talks about death, but there is some very suggestive hissing and steam coming off of metals.
Yeah, and
there's
slamming
a lot
of axes
sweaty
and stuff.
male tunics going on. Like, they're forecasting what's going to happen later between the two of them. But Arya crucially says, I know death, he has many faces. I look forward to seeing this one. This is one of the lines that has been kind of kicked around in the promo materials for the show. Yeah,
this was the big opening speech in the main trailer for the season. And I think that the contrast between Arya's bravado and everybody else's, like, complete and total terror is notable and slightly concerning. Like, I don't want anything bad to happen to Arya, and I love that she's bold and confident. And her training has certainly positioned her as well as, or maybe better than anybody else there to actually make a move on the Night King, but I'm really worried about overconfidence.
Yes.
Especially.
Also notably, she's not...
Never had sex before the night of a big game until now.
She's also like, she's also not an open battle fighter.
Right.
She's never been in a battle. She's the one who sneaks up on you and cuts your throat. She's not the one who like fights a massed army on the wall of a castle.
Yeah. Over at the Godswood, Jaime goes up to Bran and apologizes for pushing him out the window, and Bran kicks his like classic unpenetrable logic to him, but it actually kind of makes sense this time around. And this is one thing that I've been sort of kicking around as I rewatched the episodes of the show leading up to this season, is Bran seems to be the only person who understands that there is a certain inevitability to what's happening in this moment outside of everything else that's happened. Nothing that happened in Game of Thrones really stops the Night King coming. I mean, sure, before the show, obviously, and Children, of the Forest and everything, but like all the stuff that's happening between these families, Bran seems to understand, that doesn't matter ultimately. He was already at that place mentally.
We've talked about this a lot on Binge Mode, that should that story come out, Jaime's pushing Bran out of window, the person who would be the coolest with it is really Bran, who is no longer, as he said to Jaime in that conversation, he's not Bran Stark anymore. He's got much, much larger concerns. He's concerned about the Night King, the Army of the Dead, keeping the memory of this world alive. He's not really worried about what Jaime did, and as he said to Jaime, that moment is the thing that made both of them.
Yes. I found Bran ever so slightly less weird in this scene in a way that was very refreshing. Like, he had candor, but not like off-putting candor, and I thought that the way that he hinted here at the future, when Jaime said, okay, well, you're not gonna tell him now, but are you gonna tell him later? Are you gonna tell him later? And Bran said, how do you know there is an afterwards? That was obviously extremely ominous and alarming, but also felt like he was tapping in a little tiny bit to like a shred of humanity and the kinds of things that drive maybe not him anymore, but the people around him. Well, what comes next?
Right. Yeah. So up until that point, Jaime's basically walking around like a James Blake song come to life. Like he's moody, he's walking around with his beard, he's got like his hair down. I feel like Bran almost like pepped him up a little bit.
I mean, it's a huge load off his shoulders. That's
at least temporarily.
Yeah, I mean, he seemed really at ease after that.
The thing is, though, with Bran, we now always have to consider what the motive is. Think back to season 7 when he gave Arya the dagger, Littlefinger's dagger, and that ended up being the dagger that she used to slit Littlefinger's throat. So every conversation that Bran has, everything he says, we have to parse.
Yeah.
Is it motivation, or is it because he's trying to move the pieces on the board?
Well, there's something that Mallory mentioned that I wanted to ask you about, which seems to be like an emerging theme from this episode, which is this idea of certain characters being concerned with afterwards.
Yeah.
And, so Bran and Jaime have this conversation later on. Miss Andy and Grey Worm have that conversation. Yes. There's this idea, and obviously Sansa and Dany's conversation is about what happens afterwards. Right. We can have this cool moment, but what happens afterwards? Did you feel that was like sort of a major theme here?
Oh yeah, it's like, it's a little bit cart before the horse. Like, can we fight this guy first before we start thinking about what we're gonna do with the Seven Kingdoms afterwards? But I think it also is in line with the things that have happened. Like for a lot of these people, they haven't seen the Night King. It's real until you see him, you know? And like for a lot of them, I think they've heard the stories, they've heard Jon talk about it, they've heard everybody who survived Bad Plan talk about it, but it's just in their DNA to think 1, 2, 3, 4 moves ahead and what happens after. Okay, we win this battle, and then what happens after.
Right. They're tacticians, they're thinkers, So we are doing the Raven Scroll, we're going through the episode scene by scene. We just talked about Jaime and Bran, but we also had some action going on outside of Winterfell. Jaime and Tyrion reunited, and they discussed Dany and her lack of support from the Northerners, and they discussed Cersei and their motivation, and her motivations, and Jaime says that, she didn't lie about the baby, and there was a really great exchange where Tyrion walks up 2 stairs so we can see Jaime in the eyes, and he says, she never fooled you. You always saw her for exactly who she was. Right. She was so obviously absent from this episode, but loomed over it.
Yeah, I mean, Bran literally parrots the iconic Jaime line, "The things I do for love," which is,
Bran loves doing that.
He does. Chaos is a ladder. I heard that you said that once. That is always, I think, the thing that we turn to when we're trying to defend Jaime's bad choices, is that at the end of the day, unlike some people who are purely evil, might not be your code, but he had a code.
He says, he says that in his trial. It's like, I did that for my family, I'd do it again.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's what governs everything he does, is this love for Cersei, which is perverted, but in some ways admirable.
Well, it was really wonderful to see him shift a little bit of that purpose to Brienne in this episode, and humanity at large. But, if the thing that drives Jaime is love, he has somebody now that he loves. I think the question becomes, how long will that be the case after next week? Which is very upsetting to think about.
In Dany's chambers, Jorah goes to meet with her to defend Tyrion's capabilities and also outline forgiveness. And, I made some mistakes. I spied on you. You forgave me. you know, this could have been my job, but you made the right choice going with Tyrion. And this was, we've been talking about this last week. We've talked about it for a lot of season 7. These like Dany moments where you're like, is she teetering? Is she on tilt?
We should talk about, that was a really interesting conversation because we should talk about Tyrion's L's, which are at this point pretty prolific.
Yeah.
Extensive.
When Dany had disappeared after the fighting pits, he basically screwed up the Battle of Meereen with the Wise Masters, essentially giving them like a 7-year moratorium on slavery. He got the fleet destroyed by Euron when it was his plan to like do this like 3-pronged attack instead of just like converging on King's Landing.
Yeah.
Trusted Cersei, engineered bad plan, getting Viserion killed, and now here he is being like, oh yeah, the Lannister army's coming north, everybody. No, it's actually not. So it's looking really bad for him, and I was actually really surprised that Jorah was like, give him another shot, like, it's fine.
I think that Jorah, who has obviously been through his share of L's, and you know, this is a pro-Jorah endeavor here, but obviously did truly horrible, reprehensible things in his life. You know, we saw him say to Dany before, well, I wouldn't be here helping you if Ned Stark had cut off my head. He's always tried to sort of check her worst impulses, and now Tyrion happens to be the beneficiary of it, but Jorah clearly recognized the need for that. I mean, hearing Dany say, either you knew Cersei was lying and let me believe otherwise, or you didn't know at all, which makes you either a traitor or a fool.
Yes.
You know what Dany does to people who make her feel that way.
Again, it's like worst impulses. I think that would be a 100% fair impulse to be like, you're fired.
Yes.
Yeah, but the worst impulse would be, I'm going to burn you alive now.
I mean, he is either a traitor or a fool, though. Like, he's terrible right now.
And they later on establish he wouldn't be much
He's
use in a
100%
fight.
a fool, but he's but he's just like awful right now.
Right. So we got through that situation in the chambers, and they discussed Jon Love, and so so we have the Dany and Jorah conversation where he gets her to relax about that, and then she goes and meets with Sansa.
Yes. Smart.
Sansa, who is wearing
another recommendation from Jorah.
Cersei Lannister's Spring Summer 15, I think.
Oh, really? I thought it was something from the Chuck and Wendy Rhodes dungeon on Billions.
I don't think you.
Where did she get that?
Also
outfit?
great Sunday programming.
Not movable enough.
A lot of leather.
Also,
you
need to see the heels to really make that.
She looked great.
She looked great, but she looked a lot like Cersei.
Yeah, well, this is a theme. I mean, last season in season 7, when she and Jon were having the conversation on the balcony, and Jon was saying, you know, you almost sound like you admire her. She was wearing one of Cersei's old hairstyles at that point, and these visual cues that link her to somebody who she has said out loud, you know, I learned a lot from her, and hopefully part of what she learned from her was how to avoid becoming a sociopath.
Sure.
Well, I think you made a good point at the beginning of this conversation, which was that was Jorah's suggestion to go talk to Sansa, not Tyrion's suggestion he was screwing up royally. And I thought that was a really great conversation. Like, Dany did really well in that conversation to point out that, like, you know, I've been focused on the Iron Throne for my entire life, and now look where I am, like in my boyfriend's old neighborhood.
Yeah, all
like,
you guys would
during
be
Thanksgiving,
smoked brisket if I had my way. Seriously.
Yeah, like I came home with my boyfriend for college break.
So
and
are
now
you
I'm
saying
doing
you felt like
this, you know,
Sansa played that scene wrong?
I thought they both played it really well.
Until the end, though.
Until the end.
Yeah,
when the thorny issue of like
North.
how does this fall within the larger framework of the Seven Kingdoms. It'd be interesting to see if Dany mentions the Iron Islands deal that she struck with Yara.
Right.
Which is like independence within the larger framework.
And speaking of Tyrion, who we keep returning to, one thing we should remember about that is Tyrion did actually ask her about not even the wisdom of it, but ultimately the sustainability of it. Well, if you grant her this, what if everybody else demands their independence? And Dany said, in essence, you know, she didn't demand it, she asked, and the others are free to ask too. Well, Sansa's asking.
Yes. Yeah.
So is Dany gonna honor her word and establish precedent? She didn't seem super receptive. She took her hand away, physically recoiled, looked really weird.
And they got interrupted. A lot of interruptions.
Yes.
Like crucial moments. We had some really nice, the Maester is here because Theon was outside. We're going through the Raven Scroll. This is scene by scene in the episode. If you want to hit us up, it's hashtag Talk the Thrones. Theon returns to Winterfell after freeing Yara last week. He says he wants to defend Winterfell, defend Sansa. So that's heartwarming. You were
Do you
like,
think so? What's your take on Theon and his redemption tour?
I think he's got one more night to live, so I'm kind of like whatever.
And can he do something in that one more night that allows him to achieve
I will get to
redemption
that
in
when
your
we
eyes?
get to that. I will get to that when we get to the Weirwood part. So he comes back, and then outside of Winterfell, Davos and Gilly are comforting the common people in a time of war, including a Shireen lookalike.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was
ready
pretty.
to fight.
Incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, Davos and Gilly both had extremely important bonds with Shireen, as I think did every consumer of this television program. And her death was devastating. And to have a little embodiment of that childlike wonder and spirit.
Yeah.
Someone who is, obviously we have that with some of the main characters like the icon Lyanna Mormont, but to just remind us again of how this is impacting people who aren't a part of the wheel, the regular people, and to then connect it directly to someone who you know is still in Davos's heart, is still in Gilly's heart. I mean, Shireen taught them to read. Never forget that. Never forget.
Very meaningful moment, the reading rainbow right there. We also got the return of Tormund and Ed.
Little Crow, that was
Little
precious.
Crow shows back up. There's that moment where it's like, he's about to hug Ed, John's about to hug Ed, and Tormund comes through and it's like, my guy, no helmet-to-helmet contact with the quarterback.
Open field tackle.
That is the prince who was promised. You're just gonna wanna leave him be, and they get the information that this is it. By the time sun comes up tomorrow, then
We're on the clock.
the White Walkers will be here. In the battle room, John leads a meeting with an incredible, just brief shot of like that cast of characters all together.
Amazing.
Which is just
really cool.
amazing because you just realize you haven't really seen them together. John now knows that, everybody, Tormund tells him everybody who's inside of Winterfell now is who we have on our team.
Right.
Everybody who's outside is likely a white. But then in this battle room, and there's so many different things to talk about here. Bran says that the Night King is going to expose himself, right?
That was huge.
Yes.
That was huge because now we finally understand some kind of motivation for the Night King, which you really haven't had up until this point, beyond he wants to turn everything into winter.
So this is a higher mystery of the show. So that's where Jason comes in and he gives us a little bit of context and depth and history on what we just saw. So this Bran revelation, hit me up.
Well, again, this is what we've been waiting for in terms of what does the Night King want. Bran mentions that many times over the centuries or millennia, the Night King has tried to kill whoever the three-eyed raven was at the time in order to kill the world, erase its memory. We only really know who the previous three-eyed raven was. It was Sir Brynden Rivers, aka Blood Raven. He was a bastard son of King Aegon IV, Aegon the Unworthy, one of the great bastards. He fought on the side of the House Targaryen against the Blackfires during the Blackfire Rebellion, was really key in turning back the Blackfire cause. His archers rained down arrows on Daemon Blackfire, killed his sons, killed him, turned back that whole attack. Eventually gets sent to the wall for stuff. It's kind of just rumors at this point. It was rumored that he was a sorcerer. He had a very kind of ominous look about him. He's an albino with this red slash, not in the books, not in the show, obviously. But he was talked about in very ominous terms. It was said that he had 1,000 eyes in one because he ran the spy network at the time, gets sent to the wall, and then during arranging about 50-ish years before the events of the show disappears.
Okay.
And obviously ends up under the tree where he becomes the three-eyed raven. What happened in those intervening years, we don't really know, but it was rumored for a time that he took Dark Sister, one of the fabled Valyrian swords that was carried by Rhaenys, the sister of Aegon the Conqueror.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Sure.
What would you say necessarily distinguishes Bran from the three-eyed raven that came before him? We don't know.
We don't know. This is the first time that we've ever, we have a working theory, which I think is pretty much confirmed kind of by this, which is that Bran was something like a custodian of the timeline, wanting to make sure that things shake out in a certain way. And I think it's a slightly different, but kind of very similar, which is he's the memory of the world.
Right.
As with powers in which time kind of has no meaning. So it's a very interesting thing to say, he's the memory of the world when he can look anywhere in time. So this is really the first time that we got an inkling of what the actual job of the three-eyed raven is. We had no idea really before this what the job posting was.
I think in terms of differences too, while we don't have confirmation for specifically every aspect of this, as Jason just wonderfully outlined. One thing we know definitively is just Bran is more powerful than anyone.
Yes.
You know, think back to when he and Jojen and Mira and Rickon and Hodor and the wolves, you know, hiding out in the little tower, and he first wargs into Hodor, and we hear, you know, Jojen and Osha explain that nobody is that powerful. Bran can do things that other people can't. So if you combine his ability with the station that he now occupies, is it possible that he's going to be able to do something that nobody else could before? The other question is, obviously there's Targaryen lineage in what came before. Is there, you know, we know Bran was, not is anymore, was Bran Stark. Well, the Night King, very popular theory, is that he was a Stark, certainly first man. So could there be some sort of familial connection there? But I thought just generally the power of that scene was twofold. You know, we obviously got a new mythology download, which is important. The show's handling of the magic that Bran embodies has been touchy. You know, we need a lot more specificity to understand heading into the endgame. But the reason this was such an effective scene is because in addition to that, we just got a lot of humanity. You know, we had Sam talking about the nature of death, the nature of memory. You can think back to conversations with, you know, Archmaester Ebros and Sam at the Citadel when he says, you know, we are the world's memory.
Yes.
And that's somebody who ultimately wasn't able to teach Sam everything he wanted to learn, but that kind of idea is ingrained in Sam's DNA.
Well, the reason why I even asked the follow-up in the first place was because there's this interesting thing where it's a really emotional episode, and there's people who are all making genuine connections, and the one character who's basically incapable of making a genuine connection is Bran. And that's because he's the three-eyed raven. I don't know if he mentioned that on this episode or any previous episode.
He comes very close to saying it, but he doesn't.
Yeah. So I sometimes I wonder about, like, Bran is all-knowing, and Bran sees the past, and Bran probably sees afterwards to some extent. Like, whether or not, how much Bran's concerned about the people who are in front of him. Like, genuinely. He understands they obviously have some residual familial bonds and friendships, and they have history, but sometimes I wonder, was there a higher purpose of what's going on with Bran at any given moment, you know? And whether or not he has his own fight to fight.
Right, well, that's a great question.
That's a great
and I don't know that we have the answer to that, but I think one of the things that we can hope for is that because Bran's destiny ultimately was not to live out his days under the roots of the weirwood tree, but to get back out into the world and to be with people and to return to his home and his family, that maybe the answer to that is yes. You know, that he can rediscover that impulse, and that if, and we talked about this last week, I think we'll probably talk about this every week until the end and probably after, this dissonance at play with these ideas of choice and destiny and how the story is going to navigate that. You know, if agency and free will is such a primary theme of the show, and it undoubtedly is, how do we reconcile that with the fact that Bran seems to know everything and is positioning people to play out a script? Those are diametrically opposed ideas.
I'll be interested.
But they don't have to be.
I'll be interested to see, you know, I think as Mal's mentioned, I think we've criticized like the handling of Bran and his magic within the context of the show many times. And I think if Bran's role next week is to just be bait, that will be a profound disappointment. Like, what is he going to take an active role? Can he warg a dragon? Are we going to find that out?
Well, because
you know, like, what's he going to do?
So much of the show is about people understanding how to think four steps ahead, like you guys said. Is Bran really, like, literally thinking only one step ahead? And speaking of that plan where he's being used as bait, I'm going to check my draft board here. I've got 100 different people I would choose to defend Bran before I choose Theon.
Wild choice.
However, I want to cite something you have said before.
Okay. Yeah, no, you're right.
The Gollum theory.
Yeah.
Like, because he would just give up everything to get, like, his
Theon
pride
has
back?
to have something left that only he can do.
Yeah, that only he can. The only way to redeem a character like this, where you're like, why is he still alive? Why is he still alive? Why hasn't anybody killed him after everything he's done?
But why is he still alive?
But why is he still alive? Much like you think with Gollum in Lord of the Rings is, there's just got to be that one thing where right at the end he does the one thing that only he can do, and you're like, okay, fine.
Right.
So I wonder what that is. I just wonder what that will be.
Okay, so back into Raven Scroll. We're going scene by scene. I'm Chris, that's Jason, this is Mallory. It's hashtag Talk the Thrones if you want to hit us up. We're still in Winterfell, obviously, but it's happy hour. It's time to get drunk. Everybody's drinking, everybody's singing, everybody's exchanging stories. Jaime and Tyrion, they're by the fire.
Hold on, I have to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
Okay.
You skipped Ghost, and I will not allow it.
God, here we go.
I absolutely will not allow it.
We have like obviously this thing where it's like, did Mallory cry yet? That's like a bit we have here.
Yeah, a bit.
I think Jason said, did Mallory lose her mind? Was how we would have to change that.
I did. It was Sean, but yes, Mallory lost her mind several times.
I was a mess. The whole episode.
When's the last time we saw him?
Season 6, episode 3, after Jon's resurrection.
Okay.
That's a long time for my guy to be off screen.
What did he like? Did he have to fire his agent too? Is he like where's he been?
It was just incredible. I mean, it was a very heartening reunion with Sam and Jon and Ed all together there, and Ed saying, and now our watch begins, like echoing the Night's Watch words and their duty and their vow, and then Ghost just hanging out right there on the side.
Not stealing scenery, just playing his role. That was pretty
great.
good.
I hope we get more from him soon. Carry on. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just we're in this great hall. Jaime and Tyrion are drinking. Brienne and Pod join them. Then Davos comes. Then Tormund comes in with just a monologue right out of David Mamet, where he explains why they call him Giant's Bane. Had that been discussed before? Did we know about the Giant's Milk and the teat suckling?
We did not know directly about it. No.
It unlocks such a mystery.
Yeah, I know, but I
Quite
do,
something.
Yeah, I love Tormund's stories. This is
Wonderful.
This is no exception.
I did miss Ygritte chiming in from the peanut gallery to just
He never
cast
flipped the bag.
aspersions.
Yeah. So they start exchanging war stories. They're about to start singing. Meanwhile, there's other sort of commiserating going on the ramparts or at the top of the wall there, because Arya asks the Hound why he's in Winterfell and what his real intentions are, and they have kind of a pretty tender moment.
It was a really nice scene.
Yeah.
There's a high list, long power rankings of emotional scenes in this episode, and that's not necessarily in the top 5, but in another episode, it might have been number 1. I mean, you think back to the Hound and Arya and their buddy comedy run earlier in the show's run back in season 4, and this idea when the Hound was so vulnerable after the neck wound, talking about, you think you're alone.
Yeah.
And she's really the only person that he's ever opened up like that with and showed this vulnerability. And then we've seen since how he softened, going on these missions and the way he talked to Brienne, and season 7 heading to the Dragon Pit about I'm not gonna get in her way. He has a real, not only respect for Arya, but a tenderness toward her. And they unlocked something in each other that really nobody else had to that point.
The next scene is Arya going to check on the status of her weapon.
Yeah.
Needs that spear.
And then
Right.
some Anita Baker starts playing.
Right. I got an update that my package has been delivered.
Let me just think of how I could put a PG spin on this. It is incredible that this show has been on for such a long time that this is where we've wound up with this character. You know what I mean? That we have been with these people so long, from childhood into literally the rites of passage into adulthood. Would you like to give me a less PG version, but not an R version?
I'm not sure I should be trusted to speak, honestly. What can I say here that is family friendly? Okay, here's what I'll say. I think that, to your point, this was an incredible microcosm of the passage of time, and an actually really moving reminder of how we have seen these characters grow up and how we have been a part of their lives for so long. Also,
We were live.
I know, that's why I'm taking my time and changing the cadence of my speech. Seriously though, I think it is so dope that Arya got to do something that not a lot of women on this show have done and say, this is what I want and this is when I want it, and go get it. Good for her, for real.
Good for her, good for Gendry. I'm glad those kids are happy. Do you have anything on this one?
No, I mean, just Gendry walking into stuff again and again.
Yummy.
Then we had probably, if that was a climax of a kind happened in that scene, we had possibly the emotional climax of the episode.
Oh, yeah.
With Brienne and Jaime. This obviously harken back to the beginning of the episode where Brienne essentially puts her life and name on the line to guarantee Jaime's survival.
Yes.
And anybody who's sort of read stories like Game of Thrones or studied things about Arthurian legend or even read stuff about Shakespeare has seen stories like this kind of play out, not necessarily in similar ways, but there's something very moving if you've ever checked any of this stuff out about getting knighted.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It has a certain pageantry.
I think you have to think back to the start of Jaime and Brienne's relationship when she was first escorting him back to King's Landing, and they were having those conversations about what a true knight is. And Brienne was very, very much in the camp that Jaime was no true knight. Not a defender of the weak, a person who did horrible things, and here she is being knighted by him. I also like that, you know, she's a person who really believed in knighthood as a part of this world, an established part of this world, and then had her eyes opened by the things that she had seen, the horrors she had witnessed. So now to come full circle where she's knighted by someone that she actually really respects, who she once didn't respect, it was really emotional. I like the way that she was like, yeah, I don't want to be a knight anymore. Like I wanted to once upon a time, but now I'm good. It's like fine. I'm fine with it now. So I wanted to for a while, but now I'm good with it.
You remember the scene with Tyrion and Jaime earlier in the episode, and they're kind of talking about how when the show started, they were archetypes. When they were last in Winterfell, he was like the golden lion. I was the whoremonger or whatever. And Jaime kind of pokes holes in it. He's like, well, we were never really that. And that's what this show has done.
Totally.
It's been like, you were never really the archetype that we thought you were. And then you have this moment where you kind of do believe in the best qualities of these people and the ideas of being a knight would matter.
Totally, but even then, even when you have a moment where you're allowed to celebrate an idea, which, you know, is rare in this world and in this story. Don't make me cry!
I'm trying to make you laugh so you don't cry.
We just have traveled so far with these people, and you know that it means so much more to Brienne than it ever would have before because ultimately of who gave it to her and of what they learned together. You know, think of one of the famous, early emblematic Jaime quotes, you know, to Kat. So many vows, they make you swear and swear. Defend the king, obey your father, protect the innocent, defend the weak. But what if your father despises the king, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? No matter what you do, you're forsaking one vow or another. And then to go from that to, you know, Jaime finally revealing the truth of what happened with the Mad King in the bathtub at Harrenhal, to him gifting the sword to Brienne and her naming it Oathkeeper, not for herself, but for him, so that he would believe and understand that she finally saw who he was, is just, it's like the heartbeat of the show in so many ways. It's just incredible. And like a moment at Joffrey's wedding when Cersei is taunting Brienne and trying to make her feel bad. I heard, you know, he saved you. And Brienne says, really, you saved him. And she says, really, he saved me. Like, we have had so many beautiful moments with these characters. And this here was a really special reminder. It's almost the opposite of the Arya Gendry scene. Like, love can come in many forms.
Yeah. I think that's actually, if you take it into totality, these two episodes have been a nice example of that, where it's like all these different relationships reflect love in their different ways. Can you tell me a little bit about the song, the Jenny song?
Yeah.
It's about Jenny of Old Stones, who was Duncan Targaryen basically gave up his throne in order to marry her.
Forbidden love.
Forbidden love, which is a, you know, what's the stories that boys love to tell? Like this, it's a big theme in this world, which is people with power who give it up for love, the things you do for love. And essentially, this is something that Duncan Targaryen did for love, which is give up the throne in order to marry Jenny of Old Stones. Who's a mysterious figure.
Yes. We also, you know, not only that connection to Forbidden Love, but that's the figures at play there have connections to Summerhall, tragedies, Targaryens, dragons. There's a lot of connective tissue there. And also a couple of the moments where the song comes up in the books, we just get a lot of sadness and despair and feelings of like hopelessness and something lost. And so it is definitely not an accident that is the song we're hearing here. When ARYA'S with the Brotherhood in the third book, there's a moment where the ghost of High Heart asks to hear the song, and we learn that this is what she always asked to hear from the Brotherhood, and Thoros sort of pulls Arya away, and he says, let her savor her song in peace. It's all she has left.
Ghost of High Heart was like a very small of stature witch. Who lived in
Woods witch.
Lived like
But that idea, like this is all you have left, that's really what this episode was.
I get nervous on Game of Thrones when songs get pushed into the foreground.
Yeah.
What about when people say goodbye to each other, kiss each other, and say, I can't wait to go see your old home with you.
What do you
Can't wait to
want
go
to
to the beaches.
R.I.P. Grey Worm, it's been nice.
I was gonna say, I mean, like, most of these things, most of them were like nice and subtle or very moving, and I really like Grey Worm. But my guy, You're just really out there being like, when we get to have that great house on the beach, you and me.
When you and I sail away on SS Live Forever into the sunset, it's gonna be wonderful.
They're just giving away condos on the west coast of Florida.
We got a lot of checkoffs. The crypts are definitely safe, and a lot of checkoffs. We'll be sailing away together afterward here.
It was really tough. I wanted to ask a little bit about that scene between JORAH and Sam, because that was another one that I think cursory watchers of the show may not understand truly the significance of him giving that sword back to JORAH, or giving it from, it's Tarly's sword, but giving it to JORAH.
Sure. JORAH was banished after he sold men into slavery. He was going to be the Lord of Bear Island, was the Lord of Bear Island. And so had to give up this Longclaw, which was the family sword of the Mormonts, now carried by Jon, which Jorah Mormont gave to Jon. So it's a moment where, Jorah's coming full circle. Someone is giving him a Valyrian sword just as his Valyrian sword was given to someone else.
Yes. We also got the scene right before Sam gives Heartsbane to Jorah, where we see Jorah and Lyanna interact. And this is actually important because, Ned Stark was seeking to execute Jorah for what he had done. And Jorah, he went into exile to avoid that punishment, which is cowardly in this world. And he, as we've heard him say time and time again, disgraced his family, was his father's shame. And Lyanna is the head of that house now, which was Jorah should have been. And for her to, not to oversimplify it, basically deign to speak to him and give him that sort of acceptance was obviously huge for him, you could see. And then, remember, Jon did offer Longclaw back to Jorah in season 7, which, offered to Lyanna first, my guy, but fine. He offered it to Jorah eventually. And what did Jorah say to him? He said, I broke my father's heart. I forfeited the right to claim his sword. It's yours. May it serve you well and your children after you. It was a beautiful moment. And Sam obviously had a complicated relationship with his father. Sam went into an exile of sorts when he joined the Night's Watch because his father threatened to murder him if he didn't give up his inheritance.
On a hunt.
These swords, for both of them, represent a certain kind of failure. And to give that to each other, obviously Sam is the one who saved Jorah's life and allowed him to be here in the first place, was really beautiful.
Let's do the crypts.
Okay.
Let's talk about what happened in the crypts. Over the course of this show, the R plus L equals J story has multiple times changed the stakes of the show. So between getting it in Tower of Joy and seeing BRAN'S vision, to Sam telling Jon just last week about it, and now Jon telling Dany. I suppose this must be a scene, Jason, that you must have known it was coming, but did it play out the way you thought it would?
In the sense of Dany immediately jumping to the most pressing point to her, which would be, Jon, you are now the rightful heir to the Iron Throne with a better claim to it than I have. That's the thing that would jump out at her, and that is exactly what jumped out at her. And she did not look happy at all.
She did not. She did not seem happy this entire episode.
No, I mean, neither episode so far has been a great episode for Dany in terms of our confidence basically in the choices that she's going to make and in the intent of her ambition. That line from Sam to Jon at the end of last episode, not the very end, but near the end, about, you gave up your crown to save your people, in essence, would she do the same? We've had a lot of moments so far that cause us to believe the answer to that would be no. And Dany thinking more in that moment about the politics and the threat to her path. We hear her say to Sansa, Iron Throne.
Iron Throne.
That's mine.
It's about what happens afterwards.
That's mine. So she is not going to do well with this threat. The fact that interruption came when it did, I'm wondering if the thing we didn't hear there was Jon saying, that's okay, I don't want it. Or Jon saying, I'm worried about you for the first time.
Or we could get married and rule together.
I mean, I would also say that just to,
you sound like Davos.
To defend Dany for a second, from her perspective, she's always done better when she's done the thing that she wanted to do. When she acted when she pulled her advisors and then just did the thing that she wanted. Walked into the funeral pyre, burned the calls, called, acted like she was going to sell one of her dragons, but then didn't tell any of her advisors. And then you get to the point where she is now, where it's like Tyrion failing her left and right. Jon, her boyfriend, a secret Targaryen. How long has he known? Did he just find out? Did he know the whole time and he maneuvered me here? Like, you could see how, from her perspective, she's been like, who's lying to me? I'm paranoid. I'm slightly paranoid.
Totally, yes, you're completely right, but that doesn't make it less alarming that her instinct in that moment was to say, you don't think it's weird that your brother and your best friend are the one who told you this?
Well, it's even like, I thought it was interesting the way that she responded to Sansa, where she was just like, she didn't say like, and I love him. She was like, no, he's manipulating me. And even though that was just like an artful way of saying maybe the same thing, and in some ways love and manipulation can go hand in hand a lot of times, I thought it was just like, she is increasingly using the language of someone who's like, this isn't my jam. Like I am an outsider here.
And I think one of the great things about this plot line is that like I can see her point of view. I understand it. I think it is alarming what the things she's saying are absolutely alarming. What she might do despite the things that her advisors might tell her to do is those things are alarming, but I also get where she's coming from.
Yes, it's just such a stark contrast to basically the montage we got over Pod's song of everybody sharing a drink together. Yeah. You know, Sam in bed with Gilly and little Sam. People really trying to hang on to that last moment of affection and love, and basically to remind themselves what they're fighting for. And Dany was kind of the only person who didn't have that.
Heavy as the head, none of them have to rule anything.
Right, and that's absolutely right. So that's the end of Ravenscroll. That's the entire episode. We get to the end, the horns blow, everybody goes to the walls, and we get our first look of the season so far of the White Walkers and their army. We're gonna break down this episode in a couple of different ways now. So that was Ravenscroll. This is Jason. This is Mallory. I'm Chris. This is Talk the Thrones. You're watching us on Twitter, and if you have any questions, concerns, comments, theories, suggestions, hit us up at #TalkTheThrones. I think we'll start with, we have some notes. This is where we just offer some notes to either some character behavior or, however we want to address it. But who wants to go first with we have some notes?
We have the same one.
We have the same one. Perfect.
Again, a great episode for Jaime.
Wonderful episode for Jaime.
We just have one note.
One note.
You're carrying Widow's Wail.
That's
one of the 2 Valyrian steel swords forged after what was melted down?
Ice, the Stark family sword, carried by Ned Stark and every Warden of the North, Lord of the North, and King of the North since time immemorial.
And
you're trying to show the Starks that you're really there for them and that that's the main priority.
The previous weapon was absurdly large.
Offered up.
Yeah, you gotta at least mention that.
As a token.
Yeah, you gotta say that. And also—
a sign of my good faith.
Also, should mention, Sansa kind of recognized it at one point. Like, where did that— Yeah, like, where did that come from? Because Valyrian steel is not coming up. There's no more being made.
So there's no limited runs.
So when 2 Valyrian steel swords, show up, you want to know where it came from.
Okay. The thing is, it's actually incredibly poetic and moving that 2 of the people who are in that castle, and shouldn't necessarily be, in normal circumstances wouldn't be, Brienne and Jaime, are carrying these weapons that it was like a foul deed what Tywin did, melting down ice. Really foul, reprehensible.
Right.
And the fact that those weapons, those pieces of Ned, those pieces of Stark history are going to be used to defend Winterfell, to defend the Starks, to defend the living is beautiful. Say it out loud.
Is it all not carried by Starks though? I mean, we should mention that something that's done in this world is when a family sword is taken in battle, usually the winning side just sends it back. They send it back to Ned didn't keep Arthur Dayne's sword.
That's right.
He delivered it back to his family. That's what you do in this world. You don't melt it down and make other stuff from it.
Tywin was a unique cat.
Tywin had his own way of doing things.
One other thing I would mention is, do you feel like possession of— this is an obvious question, but in terms of the show, this episode specifically, do you feel like possession of a Valyrian steel sword drastically increases your chance of making it through at least the first round of fighting?
No. I think I'm afraid it might be the opposite.
Yeah.
Because those people are going to be in the thick of it. I am extremely worried about a lot of the characters, but it felt like we got goodbyes. I mean, we'll obviously preview the break down the scene more later, but Jorah getting Heartsbane means that Jorah is going to try to go kill White Walkers.
Yeah.
Brienne?
Brienne's
got the left flank.
Loved the knighting. loved the knighting scene. It really felt like a beautiful send-off for
Closing
Brienne.
of a book.
Yeah.
I'm worried, really worried.
Let's go to Wins of Twitter. We got people hitting us up on Twitter, and Claire writes, I need a count for how many times @Mallory Rubin has cried in this episode. # Talk the Thrones. We like to call this Did Mallory Cry? We already know you freaked out over Ghost being back.
Lost it when I saw Ghost. I mean, we'll let everyone behind the curtain for a second. You know, I think it's fair to say that I am the most intense about maintaining utter silence while we watch these episodes. I take it extremely seriously. I don't want to miss anything. And multiple times during this episode, Jason had to slack. Please put Mallory in a different room.
It was absurd, actually.
I was wailing. I was gesticulating. You were as well. Not from tears, but we were all very active. I was a wreck. I mean, I really was. I thought the Jaime Brienne plotline in particular was very, very moving. You know, Jaime saying that he would be honored to serve under Brienne's command.
Perfect payoff.
Was just incredible.
Perfect
and that was
emotional
before
payoff.
we even got to knighting.
Yeah.
Since we got one of those, and that one really felt earned and beautiful.
Just all of it. I mean, all of it. Everyone, the conversation between Grey Worm and Missandei, the conversation between Sam and Jorah.
Yeah.
Really all of it.
I promise we're gonna get this amazing seafood place.
Yeah. Where do you want to go after this?
Yeah. My pension is going to be great because I'll get combat pay. All right, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. This is Talk the Thrones, # Talk the Thrones. We'll be back in just a sec.
Check out The Ringer for all your Game of Thrones needs. Every Monday, listen to The Watch with Chris Ryan and Andy Greenwald as they dive into the cultural impact of Game of Thrones.
It appeals to diehard genre people, but it also has leached into the public conversation.
Every Tuesday, Mallory Rubin and Jason Concepcion take your Game of Thrones questions live on Ask the Maester.
Dennis sucks, guys.
Real hard ass. Not a fun dude.
Every Wednesday, Binge Mode guides you through a deep dive look at each Game of Thrones episode.
You feel exactly the opposite about the Mountain, who is still with us, though in undead form.
Check out more coverage on The Ringer with written recaps, Ask the Maester columns, episode exit surveys, and the brand new Pre-Capables podcast dropping every Friday. So be sure to tune in all week on TheRinger.com.
Hello and welcome back to Talk the Thrones. I am Chris Ryan. This is Jason Concepcion. That is Mallory Rubin. We are talking about episode 2 of season 8 of Game of Thrones, and that episode was called, and they've been a little poker faced about this, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, which is obviously in reference to Brienne and Jaime's moment. We're gonna get into our Fire and Ice winner of the week. Our Fire and Ice winner of the week is presented by Wendy's. You can get a free small Frosty when you order delivery of a Wendy's spicy chicken combo using promo code HouseWendy's on DoorDash's delivery app. Mallory.
Christopher.
Who's your winner of the week? You're just gonna list the cast.
Yeah.
It's me for seeing Ghost again. It's Brienne. It's Brienne and Jaime together. I mean, it was incredible. It really was one of the most rewarding payoffs that we have had for not only one, but 2 character arcs. Think back to, you know, we're wearing the Knights of Summer shirt. Think back to our time with the Knights of Summer in Renly's camp when Renly was still around and Brienne beat Loras. I'll give you anything. I'll grant you anything. What did she ask for? A place in Renly's Kingsguard.
Yeah.
Like, Brienne has always valued this idea of knighthood and protection.
Right. Almost naive about it.
How many other characters
Yeah.
in this story
Yeah.
would have followed Kat's word and the promise that she made to Kat as fully as Brienne did? Maybe none. Like, it's possible that the answer is none. You know, and in many ways, Brienne has been the most emblematic of a true knight of any character on the show. And for her, what's in a name, what's in a label? Nothing, maybe, but it means something to the people in the world. And for her to get to have that was just so beautiful.
Jason, who's your winner of the week?
I'm gonna go out of the box. I mean, I could pick Arya. I could pick Brienne. I agree with everything Mal said about Jaime and Brienne. I'm gonna go with the reputation of the Winterfell crypts as the safest place. It's the safest place. I think you should go there. Sell high now.
Yeah.
Sell high on Winterfell crypts are the safest.
They're packing it with people who can't fight.
It's so safe, guys.
Can you not fight? You should go to the crypts.
I think you should go to the crypts. It's gonna be
Extremely
the
worrying.
safest place. Go there now. Sell high on crypts, everyone.
Couple that with the positioning of Bran in the Godswood and that part of the plan. We have multiple pockets now of people who are really, really going to be susceptible to attack. It's scary.
Yeah.
Scary.
My loser of the week. I like to sometimes just balance it out.
Sure.
Everybody got a special moment this episode. Arya got to reenact risky business. People got to really have some closure or at least get some emotional depth with each other.
Or have sex.
Barrack comes up there. He's been through a lot. He's died. He's come back.
Sure.
And he sits down and he's just like the Lord of, and it's like, Arya just walks right away. It's like he has to sit up there with the Hound for the rest of the night, drinking bag wine. I just thought he deserved a little bit better.
He's barely himself anymore. He's been brought back so many times that he's like a shadow of himself. All he can do is talk about the Lord of Light. You can kind of understand it, but it's like the guy is a little bit one note at this point. I do wonder why nobody throws back in his face, what about the burning of children, my dude?
Yeah, I think he's a winner because as noted in this episode, at one point in time, he was on Arya's list.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So escaping that is like a very lucky break for
At
my
another
guy.
point in time, and multiple of those points in time, he was dead. So he's been winning. He's been winning a lot.
This is just a Wednesday to him. All right, let's go to the small council. That's where Twitter asks us questions. We're going to take some tweets now. The first one comes from Mike Condon, hashtag Talk the Thrones. He wants to know, will Bran have to take Dany back in time to the tournament at Harrenhal to prove Jon's lineage?
It kind of seemed like she believed it.
Yeah, why would you get mad if you didn't believe it?
she was, if maybe she's gonna ask for more concrete confirmation, which I'm sure Sam could provide at this point because he has it on paper.
Yeah, and Sam and Dany are getting along famously.
Well, I mean,
it should go well.
But I think that she seemed alarmed enough by it. She seemed to take it pretty seriously already.
We being the collective, were, I think, thinking face emoji last week about Dany suggesting that Jon ride the dragon when she should know that Valyrian blood is a part of dragon riding, and as the showrunner said on the inside of the episode, they said only Targaryens, flat out, only Targaryens can ride dragons on the show.
Right.
So now we piece all this together, and it's like clearly that was introduced ahead of the reveal of Jon's parentage to warm her up to this idea, to make her more susceptible, again, to play into what Jason's saying, where she might not want to acknowledge that it's true, but a lot of the information that she has, we heard her reference I'd always heard that Rhaegar was such a great guy, loved to sing. What else did he love? Playing the harp. Could the harp be in the crypts? Could Rhaegar's harp be in the crypts? Tangible evidence. Sam has the scrolls. Could the harp be there?
Sure. The thing is can you ride shotgun on a vision quest with Bran?
TBD.
Yeah.
We're not sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Theoretically, maybe if he worked into you, but we just don't know.
You know what I keep thinking about when you guys talk about Dany, and especially in this situation? God, she's running out of allies, man. Not in the sense that people don't believe in her, because so many people obviously believe in her with their lives. Tyrion's a Lannister.
Yeah.
Jorah is maybe rediscovering his northern heritage to some extent. Sam doesn't like her. Grey Worm and Missandei are gonna move to Florida. We've got I'm just watching all of these people kind of step back from the line from her.
Well, I think if she's made a mistake, it's in believing that strength is what wins you loyalty, and I think that
Might equals right, yeah.
And that carried for a while, when she was freeing the bonded of Marine and Slaver's Bay. I think that carried over. But at this point, when it's everybody's facing their end, potentially, you're just going to see people step back. And that's just a natural thing.
That's a tough beat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got Tim Devane here who asks another Daenerys question. He wants to know, could Dany bail on Winterfell due to Jon's news before the White Walker attack?
She could certainly fly away, but it's she'd leave her whole army there. It'd be hard to evacuate the Unsullied at that point.
No.
Yeah.
I don't see a scenario where this is possible. There's a little nod there between Dany and Jon. Seems like there has to be some sort of plan for the dragons. Also, let's remember that once you ride a dragon, you're bonded to it. So even if she wanted to do this, which I don't think would be in her character or in line with the plot of the show, Rhaegal belongs to Jon now.
Yeah.
So good luck taking him away from his rider.
That's right.
Who you gave him to.
That's going to be a wild moment. That's going to be a wild reveal when she's like, Rhaegal.
And he's just that's my guy. Camille Beltrow asks, do the writers really think that giving us a glimpse of Ghost in the background, not even being acknowledged by anyone in the scene, is enough? Was he like CGI'd in? Did they like...
Well, yeah, that's the whole thing.
I know, but like, did they add him after the fact? Did the actors know he was there?
It certainly, Camilla, thank you for asking. We know Camilla from Binge Mode, Talk of Thrones, all of it, and she had to protect Ghost shirt. I know that. Camilla, you're the best. No, it was not enough, but think of what we've had for so long. Nothingness, emptiness, what comes after?
Yeah.
Everybody wants to talk about what comes after, and the answer is always nothing. You know, when Melisandre asked Beric and Jon, is there anything after death? It's nothingness. Well, that's all we had with Ghost for so long, nothingness. We got something. And I will take it for now as just a tether to life. I want more.
Let's get into Three-Eyed Raven. This was an episode that was about people talking about afterwards and whether or not there will be an afterwards, but there's always an afterwards for us, at least for a few more weeks. So let's look into next week's episode and talk a little bit about what to expect from what is obviously going to be the Battle of Winterfell. Mal, you had something you wanted to get off your chest here.
I, again, just can't help but feel like we just said goodbye to a lot of the people that we really, really, really care about. You know, The Long Farewell is the name of a poison on the show.
Yes.
And if we keep that in mind, we can hold on to the idea that this was a long farewell that brought us joy in the moment, but ultimately will maybe taste a little bitter after the fact when we realize what it meant. You know, that moment with Grey Worm and Missandei, again, Jorah receiving Heartsbane, receiving that conversation, just the conversation, the interaction with his house, Brienne getting knighted. How many reminders have we had from Davos that he's not good in a fight? You know, now he's survived all those times before, so maybe, but all of these touching moments, all of these instances that really felt like these characters finding closure, not only with each other, but maybe a little bit of peace with themselves. I don't know how many people are gonna make it out next week.
I'm going to piggyback off that and off of my winner to say that I don't think the reputation of the Winterfell crypts is the safest place. And Winterfell is going to make it out of next episode. It's a place that was built to house dead people, and you're fighting an enemy that can raise the dead. So I just feel like, with all the go to the crypts is safest, go to the crypts is the safest, that's going to not be the case at the end of the battle next week. There's gonna, they're either the dead are either gonna find a way in, because we know that there are passages through the crypts out, the ways that the Kings of Winter had built in so that they could escape in case of emergencies.
And who knows that though? Theon. Because Maester Luwin says that to him in season 2 when he's trying to encourage him to escape, and Theon says, I wouldn't make it 10 feet, and he says, there are ways out. Maybe Theon can share that information with them, and maybe it still can be a way out instead of a way in.
Theon will be too busy begging the Night King to knee him in the groin so that he can defend Bran.
Theon is going to be too busy making eyes at Sansa, because there was a lot of Sansa Theon
friction. Well, anything's possible in this world.
In this episode.
Jason, one of the things that I noticed in the trailer, well, actually, this is a better way of asking this. They very much are like, we're playing like prevent defense here.
Right.
This is not like going to be two massive armies meeting on a battlefield. We're basically trying to stall for long enough to take out the head, right?
Right. It's like Avengers, the first Avengers movie.
Yes.
You're just trying to hold on until the Night King shows himself, and then you take him out, and hopefully everybody goes down. I think what that means is we've got to see some dragon combat.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've got to see some aerial combat.
And there's that one line where it's like, does dragon fire kill them? And Bran says, no one's ever tried.
Right. We're going to see somebody try.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to try.
We have seen fire that stops whites, not stop White Walkers. And we saw that at the Three-Eyed Raven's cave.
And they've shown that to us numerous times. They show it to us at the Battle of Bad Plan when Dany's dragons light a bunch of the ground on fire, and the White Walkers just walk through it, and it just goes like and dies down. So we're gonna find out if, but that's also always indirect. It's not a direct flame directly from the mouth of a dragon onto a White Walker.
And that also gets back to your idea of timelines and Bran always saying, you know, no, now's the time.
Right.
There was a moment in Frozen Lake battle when Jon was staring up at the Night King and Beric literally says to him, there he is, go end
get
it.
him. Yeah.
And it doesn't happen. Jon's like, not now. Well, maybe because the now has to be here next week.
So that would suggest that you guys are feeling a little bit like we're confident that at least Jon makes it through the next episode. Who holds Winterfell at the end of that next episode? If you
The Night King.
The Night King. I think they lose, and everybody who
just Belichick walking into
our
Arrowhead.
our survivors escape either through the tunnels or in Dragonback, and I think we're going to see a retreat from Winterfell.
Yeah, I think the only question is, are we heading to Dragonstone or the Iron Islands? Because Yara, as we know, has announced that she is going to retake the Iron Islands in case they need to retreat.
Right.
Chekhov's the White Walkers can't go across open water.
Let's find out. We cannot wait for next week's episode. Until then, I'm Chris Ryan. That's Jason Concepcion. That's Mallory Rubin. This has been Talk the Thrones, the Ringer's Game of Thrones after show. We will see you next Sunday, immediately after the East Coast airing of Game of Thrones.